You've taken a wrong turn down Creep Street.
Greetings, citizens of the Milky Way. My name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
And this is Creep Street. Real quick, as always, up top, if you're listening to us on Apple, please go into that Apple Podcast app and hit us with 5 stars. It takes literally a second. It really helps us out. It gets us up in those algorithms, you know what I mean?
And it just feels so good.
And it just feels so good.
It's just natural.
Absolutely, it's natural. But hey, like we always say, if you're listening on Spotify, you listen on the outlet of your choice. What's important is that you're listening. Also, tell your friends. We are on Twitter at Creep Street Pod, Facebook and Instagram at Creep Street Podcast. On our Facebook page, there is another page. It's a little fan page where we like to post at least once a day with movies we like, games we like, or just creepy articles. Anyone can join that. You just click that button and one of us will let you in there. Let's get started. Maureen, what are we talking about today?
Okay, I am so pumped. We're doing this. We're ready, okay? It is listener suggestion month.
You bet your fucking ass.
Okay.
It is listener suggestion.
Okay, and today, who is our sweet, sweet suggesteur?
Our listener suggestion is coming out of the Emerald Isle in beautiful Ireland.
Oh my gosh.
Instagram user Nicola Pascal.
There she is.
And also, I want to give a shout out. Also, check out her Instagram. She has 2 Instagrams. Her other one is at Crescent Moon Cult. It's the outlet she uses for her art. She's an artist. Super cool stuff.
Very cool.
Very cool stuff. And we love her. She's pretty much been listening to us since the beginning.
An OG.
She's great. What are we talking about?
Well, our girl, okay, she suggested that we do Rajneeshpuram.
If you're all familiar, the Netflix documentary Wild Wild Country, this Rajneeshpuram is the name of their location.
Yes.
Not the actual name of the cult.
The group is more, or cult is, they're often called Rajneeshis, Sannyasins, they have lots of different names.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
That's why we're calling it Rajneeshpuram, because it's just the easiest way. So the leader of this group, he was a guru who was known by many names. What we will usually call him in this episode will be Rajneesh, Bhagwan Shri Rajneesh, or Bhagwan. He was born on December 11th, 1931. And he was born in India. He was the oldest of 11 kids. He was out here. He was living his life. And then, what time goes by as it does. Flash forward.
Right.
He's 21 years old, okay?
Okay.
It's March 21st, 1953.
Hell of a year.
Hell of a year. He's sitting in a garden, Bonvartal Garden. You get it. You know what I'm saying, guys.
And as always, blanket statement. Anything we mispronounce, it's not out of lack of respect.
Oh, it's just for lack of knowledge.
Just a lack of being able to fucking say it.
Yeah. Okay, so he was sitting under this tree in this beautiful garden, and all of a sudden, he just became enlightened.
Well, goddamn.
Yes. According to him, he said that all of the sudden he was in that garden very late at night and everything just became incredibly luminous. And he just sat under the tree and things just began to settle. And he said he received a message and blessings of God to achieve enlightenment. So that's so cool.
And he was 21 at the time?
Yeah, he's 21 and he just said he got a message and blessings from God and he just knew he was enlightened.
Sounds like he did DMT for the first time.
It sure does. It does. But he says no. He says it was for real. So,
Well, hot damn.
He's
also, just how nice is it that you can just be sitting there and be enlightened? It wasn't like you didn't have to climb to the tallest mountain.
Right.
Read these ancient tomes. You're just sitting under a goddamn sycamore.
Right. But to be fair, though, he had been very introspective for pretty much his whole life leading up to that. He was always questioning things, being why are things the way that they are? And I have different thoughts and I like philosophy.
Right. Probably wasn't captain of the football team.
No.
Okay.
No, but he was captain of the thinking team.
Yeah.
So much so that he got a BA and an MA. Okay, we're talking a bachelor's and a master's degree.
Ooh.
Okay, in philosophy. So this guy is cool. I mean, well, at least smart. I mean, who knows? Right after he graduated, he got a teaching position at a college, but his boss at the college actually asked him to step down because he was like, hey, I think that you're just like persona and your thoughts and what you're putting out in the world. You know what? I think that is a danger to the students and like their like character and morality and their religion and stuff.
Interesting. Wow,
Your thoughts are too
fucking awesome. Rajneesh, you are too fucking rock and roll for this
You
fucking
are
school.
too rock and roll.
I'm sorry, Rajneesh, but you're just too goddamn rock and roll.
To rock and roll, honey. And then he went to another university and he taught there for a while. He was just like really popular and everyone was like, oh man, like this guy is like super smart. They promoted him to be like a full-on professor, you know, not just like an instructor, you know. But that wasn't his only thing.
Right.
You better believe that he had a side hustle.
Oh, of course, please.
I mean, hello. He was traveling all around India, okay? And he was giving lessons on all of these things that he was thinking about, like giving lectures and speeches, much like he did as a teacher, but now just like out, he would go on like lecture circuits, like,
wow.
you know.
So he must have already gained some notoriety then for his...
Yeah, because he was just like putting his, you know, like ideas out there.
Right. And people actually wanted to apparently sit and listen.
Right.
So,
well, you know, he was a professor at a college. He was like a qualified person to listen to. You know, he had a master's in philosophy.
Exactly.
Not that saying going to school makes you smart and
Yeah,
only
right,
going to
of
school
course,
makes
of
you
course.
smart.
We're saying this wasn't just some schlup. He
Right.
had an education. He knew what he was fucking
He was
talking
out here
about.
grinding.
He was grinding.
Mm-hmm. So here's the thing though. So he was like, hey, like these are my ideas. And like, I don't really think socialism is the way. And also like, I'm not really like super into like religions, like institutionalized religion. And I'm also like, have a lot of like critiques for Gandhi.
Oh, really?
Yes. The last one, you gotta say, sir?
Is that maybe what got him in a little trouble?
It did. I mean, all of this got him in trouble, but that definitely did not help.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so he said that Gandhi was a masochistic reactionary who worshipped poverty.
Well, goddamn.
So those are some strong words for
That was a roast.
a peaceful. Yeah, that was a roast
That was
of
a
Gandhi.
roast. That was a Comedy Central roast of Gandhi.
God, let's get Pete Davidson in here.
Rajneesh, master of ceremonies.
Oh my
Roast
God.
master general.
Oh, we love this. We've been thriving on this. So yeah, so that's like a lot. And then he also was like, hey, my ideas about India are that we like move forward with like modern technology and birth control. Okay.
Oh, okay.
He was like, there's too many people here.
Yeah.
But he was also like,
see.
I'm here for sex. Like, have sex though. Like, I'm not saying don't have sex.
Right.
I think sex is healthy, but like maybe we should wrap it up. Now, at this point, when he was giving these speeches, it was more so in the 60s. He said that Orthodox Indian religions were just empty rituals, like they were filled with oppression, and that these religions were taking advantage of these people and their poverty. That made him really controversial, but that also made a lot of other people be like, hold on, I'm into this.
Right.
And a lot of the people that were like, hold on, I'm into this, were Europeans and Americans. So he started getting like a little bit of a following. One thing leads to another. He started leading these like meditation camps, retreats. He called them life awakening movement, like retreat things. He became like so known for it that the university that he worked at actually asked him to step down because he was so controversial and known for his teachings. And he was like, okay, that's fine.
He just walks in with a mic, says fuck Gandhi, and just drops it.
Apparently. I mean, that's kind of what it sounds like. But he was like, you know what? My side hustle has become my hustle. So he's like, I'm into this. This is great. And so in 1968, he did a lecture series, and it was called From Sex to Super Consciousness. He was from then on really known as like the sex guru in India, and not in a cool way, not in a like, oh, he's the sex guru. He is a sex guru.
So he was the original Carrie Bradshaw of Sex in the City.
Yeah, he was
the guy. He was blogging about it, you know, but probably, you know, had his own issues to deal with.
Like hung out with his like friends.
He's
a
trying
lot.
to have it all.
I mean, can you blame him? What's interesting was he was still in 1969. He was still invited to speak at this Hindu conference. I don't really know why they invited him. That seems like it was a poor choice, but they still did. And at this conference, he said, "Any religion which considers life meaningless meaningless and full of misery and teaches the hatred of life is not a true religion. Religion is an art that shows how to enjoy life. On September 26, 1970, he initiated his first group of followers.
Okay.
They were called the Neo-Sannyasins. Now, sannyasins is a term that had already existed, kind of referring to people who took an oath of not necessarily poverty, I don't know if that's the right word, but like of simplicity and putting their life towards, I don't know whether that's God or enlightenment or whatever, I'm not totally sure. But this was called Neo-Sannyasins. So these ones were like his version of that, but he was like, hey guys, I want you all to wear like reddish orange, which is this like very important color in Indian culture with gurus. And also like, I want you to like carry this locket with like a picture of me in it and like wear a mala necklace. But I also like want you to like be like cool and still like have fun, you know?
Right.
He was like, hey, but like, I want your life to be like fun. Like, don't like the original sannyasins don't like withhold yourself from stuff, like enjoy. So once again, everyone's like, okay, this sounds cool. I'm into this. He was like, you guys don't worship me. He thought of himself as, he said this, a sun encouraging the flower to open. So more so he was just helping people on this freaking journey.
Okay.
So at this time, he even said someone had asked him for a list of like is there a 10 commandments of this Sannyasin Rajneeshi thought process?
Right. What's the nuts and bolts?
What's
of
the
this
deal?
whole
And he
thing?
was like, well, it's not really like that. It's not really like a religion, you know, but like I'll give you, you know, like I'll throw you a bone. Here's some like things. Okay. And here are the 10 commandments. By the way, these aren't literal commandments. These are just kind of like
guidelines.
the things that they like. Things that
Signposts.
Rajneesh was like, I'm into this. 1, never obey anyone's command unless it is coming from within you also. 2, there is no God other than life itself. 3, truth is within you. Do not search for it elsewhere. 4, love is prayer. 5, to become a nothingness is the door to truth. Nothingness itself is the means, the goal, and the attainment. 6, life is now and here. 7, live wakefully. 8, do not swim, float. 9, die each moment so that you can be new each moment. 10, do not search. That which is. Stop and see.
Okay.
So that's just like the vibe. So he was this time he was in Mumbai, and it was very humid there, and that apparently had negative effects on his health. I don't know if that actually made this negative effects on his health, but that's what he said did it.
Okay.
Was the humidity. It probably was just like, you know, his genes. So he developed diabetes, asthma, and had a bunch of different allergies.
Oh boy.
So he was like, hey, this is like hard for me. Just keep that in the back of your mind, everyone.
Right.
Then in 1974, Rajneesh started a new ashram. He started one called the Poon Ashram that ran from 1974 to 1981. And this was like the place where people would like come from all over to like receive his knowledge and to have these meditation retreats and to like all of that stuff. And something that was different and kind of cool and interesting about this was he would record a lot of people from all over the world, even if they weren't at the ashram. They could like listen to it on tape or watch it on, you know, whatever the fuck. So because of all of the recordings that were being sold, the number of Westerners spiked. So this like brought in a lot more money for the ashram. So what was going on in the ashram is very interesting and kind of weird. It was like very emotional and high energy and super intense all the time.
Right.
It genuinely reminds me of drama school. I went to drama school, and it does kind of sound like this. So the day began at 6 a.m. with something called dynamic meditation.
Meditation at 60 frames per second.
Right.
4K.
We're loving it. Basically, it's a lot of deep breathing and a lot of movement as well. Like you put your hands above your head or arms above your head and you jump. The whole idea is kind of like to get your body in a place of not like panic or anything like that, but just like things aren't just sitting in your body.
That's right. Because I remember you see that it's one of the first times you see the cult together.
Right.
And they're doing that. And they shout too as they do it, right? Because they're like releasing.
Mm-hmm. They like make a lot of noise. So at first it's like just like inhaling, like intense inhaling, exhaling, and it progresses more and more and more. You can do these alone, but Bhagwan specifically said that he thought it was better when in a group because of like you could feed off of each other's energy and that will like elevate you. And the idea of it is good, I think, that it's like you're getting your body moving. You just say whatever. You let it all out. You just let yourself be emotional and angry or primal, like kind of like your animal come out.
Right.
And that I think is important because then I think a lot of people afterwards they'd have they would cry. It would be really emotional. It'd just be like a huge roller coaster of emotions.
A great initiation tactic.
Trauma bonding.
You are releasing all of this tension together.
Yeah.
And therefore you instantly then have an emotional bond with everyone there.
Yes, exactly. This is like very cult.
Another tactic would be, in a similar vein, but a different method, would be a group of people sitting around in a circle and telling like their darkest thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
This is kind of like another form of that. You are basically acting insane. You are dropping all inhibitions in front of these people, and therefore you bond with these people.
Exactly. And that's what is so hard. Just the issues with cults get so muddy and complicated is because sometimes that is a cult tactic to initiate people. But in some ways, doing things like that can actually be very, very healing.
Oh, yes.
So it's so murky. It all depends on like the intention, who's doing it. If the people have a choice, it's what, you know.
Yeah, I don't mean to paint with a broad brush. You're absolutely right. There are, obviously, you talk to a therapist or a priest, or you talk to, there's good ways of doing this. I'm not trying to paint with a broad brush.
Yeah.
Just saying, when it comes to cults or these fringe groups, that is a common early on tactic to sort of get you to drop your inhibitions and your guard, essentially.
Yes. And then after that, they would receive at least an hour-long or hour-and-a-half-long lecture from Bhagwan. They had different therapies during the day with different like therapist counselors. And then at the evening, there would be something called, I think it's pronounced a darshan, which is like cool chats that you would have with Bhagwan at night.
Like TED
basically.
Talks.
Kind of like TED Talks. Sannyasins, once again, that's the name of the people who are attending this ashram. After they graduated from that, they could apply to work at the ashram. Work isn't really like the exact right word. It was modeled after the Russian mystic Gergachev and the community he led in France. So this was hard manual labor, unpaid labor, and supervisors of the workers were encouraged to kind of like poke at, not physically poke at people, but to kind of like get under their skin. Just were like trying to provoke them to get to make them supposedly have this self-discovery or transcendence.
You gonna transcend, tough guy? You gonna get enlightened?
Yeah, kind of like pointing out their flaws.
Oh yeah, Tubby? You gonna reach enlightenment? Oh, I bet you are. If you can put down the Ben and Jerry's, am I right?
Okay, you're really, really good at that. So yeah, that's what would happen. And just to be clear, I know we talked about those like 10 commandments and stuff, but just to give just to really clarify what the kind of deal was, they just really wanted to embrace joy and playfulness, and they wanted to have their community and the world to be based on science rather than like old religious dogma. And they wanted this movement of theirs to be open to people of all religions or no religions. It was kind of, the idea was you didn't have to just be a Rajneeshi. You could be anything as well as.
Right.
And so they were not trying to create like an actual religion. So even though because it wasn't a religion, there weren't like a clear set of guidelines like that you would expect from many other religions, but some things that were clear was that Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh discouraged people from getting married and having kids because he thought that families just ultimately brought on dysfunction, like it was just gonna happen. So he wasn't against kids in general. Like if
but
someone,
don't make it like it's my sole duty to pop out as many kids as I can. Like, don't live that kind of life.
Yeah, he wasn't like saying it's a sin to have a child.
I see.
But more so just being like, so he was very pro birth control. He was very pro choice. So yeah, Bhagwan thought that families in large cities and nations would eventually be replaced by like smaller self-run communities, like communes,
Interesting.
basically.
I guess you could say he was bog wrong.
Oh my God, Dylan. the Poon ashram, it's like, oh my gosh, this is like getting too small. Like I can't do my thing. You know what I mean? Like let me spread my wings and fly.
Of course.
And other places in India were like, hey, we have some like issues with you. I don't think this is really going to work out. They were making it hard. And at this point, a lot of his followers started noticing that when he was giving his speeches or his lectures, there would be less and less actual intellectual information or wisdom. And it was more so just like dirty jokes or ethnic jokes, kind of like liked getting a shock out of people.
This was at his so he was just doing stand-up?
He started just doing a tight five.
I mean, we already know he's the roast master general.
Oh, I mean,
look what he did to
absolutely.
Gandhi. Ouch.
Oh,
Roast.
I mean, if you're going to start your career by roasting Gandhi, I mean,
Where are you going to, yeah.
Jesus Christ. So he's like, okay. So people are like, okay, this is kind of like weird, but people were also like kind of into it because they were like, oh my gosh, but he's like fun and like he like pushes boundaries and like makes jokes. Like we like this. We were like having fun.
Right.
So
He's like that 60-year-old guy that still wears Chuck Taylors. And it's like, well, you know, I appreciate the zeal for life.
right. But at what
um,
cost? In comes our other main player. Her name is Ma Anand Sheila.
This lady, she is one hell of a gal.
Yeah, who she was born in December 1949 in India. When she got a little bit older, she was 18. She went to college in America. She married an American, and then they came back to India to go to this ashram, the Poon ashram that Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh was running. Sheila and her husband became disciples, I guess, of him. Unfortunately, her husband passed away, but Sheila was just like killing it. Bhagwan just was really, really trusted Sheila, and Sheila worked her way up through the ranks, and then he asked her to be his personal secretary. Basically, being his personal secretary is being his number two.
She was literally his tip of the spear, I guess you would say.
Yeah, she had so many responsibilities. You know, he was in charge of the content of these lectures and everything, but
Right.
everything else about the logistics and all of that and media and everything was really put on Sheila's shoulders. So this was like a very, very big deal. So he was like, Sheila, think this ashram here in India, it's too small. We need to go to America.
Right,
like this
move on
is,
up.
so he sends her, like, go figure it out. Like, he's like, please, Sheila, like, please find a dope spot. And Sheila's like, I got it. So she goes, she's like looking around, blah, 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 trying to figure out all this stuff. And Bhagwan's health wasn't really super great. He apparently had a prolapsed disc. And for some reason, it couldn't really be treated in India, but it would be able to be treated in the States. Sheila actually issued a public statement. And in the statement, she said that Bhagwan would be in extreme danger if he stayed in India. But that is part of the reason how they got a visa for him in the first place to get to America. He was like, I have a reason to be coming to
He
America.
needs
I need
special
surgery.
care. Right.
And also on April 10th, 1981, Bhagwan, he entered a period of silence. He said he was no longer going to speak. When he did speak, it was very much just with those closest around him. So this even more so gave Sheila even more power because Bhagwan wasn't speaking at the time. And he trusted Sheila so much. She represented him. He really trusted her. He actually gave her power of attorney for a period of time as well. Like this was like serious. He really was like, Sheila, I trust you. Like, let's do it. Let's like go to America. Now it's June 13th, 1981. Okay. Sheila is married again. This reason why I didn't say anything before is because honestly, it doesn't really matter. I don't even really know if they were like married. I think it might have just been like on paper. It seemed weird.
Her second husband?
Yeah.
Okay.
So her husband purchased a huge plot of land in Oregon, and he bought it on behalf of the U.S. foundation that was Bhagwan had set up for this. It was over 64,000 acres. It was a ranch in Oregon known as Big Muddy Ranch. You heading over to Big Muddy?
I'm headed over to Big Muddy.
But they were like, oh my gosh, we just bought this ranch. This is very cool. We're going to change the name to Rancho Rajneesh. Okay, so where they moved in, where they bought this ranch is in the Pacific Northwest. For those who don't know where Oregon is, I love the Pacific Northwest. It is so gorgeous, so beautiful. And this area of Oregon was widely unpopulated. The nearest town was called Antelope, Oregon, and their population was only 60.
Wow,
Like
okay.
small as hell.
Basically a village.
Yeah, it was one of those towns where it was pretty much just retired people came to just get, away from it all. They're like, I'm retired, let me like have some fresh air. And it was such a small town that like being the mayor, everyone just took turns being the mayor
Right.
of the town. It was just like, oh, what a drag. It's my turn to be mayor this year. Or whatever, you know what I mean?
Oh,
it was just
oh.
like everyone did it So when all of these Rajneeshis start coming in, there was kind of a huge range of emotions and thoughts of what was going on. And yeah, there was a huge range of emotions. People just didn't really know what to expect or what was even really like going on there, because this is just this super, super small town. And they're like, oh, a bunch of people all wearing red are showing up, and oh, they seem to have sex really, really loud. There's no buildings here and there's no sound pollution, so you can really hear it. So they're like, this is weird. But then some people were like, at the very beginning, they were like, I mean, it's a free country. They're just like bought some land, a huge gamut. So what the Rajneeshis did was they took this huge mass of land that was essentially just kind of barren, and they created, just from the ground up, they created their own city, like real like community. They made an irrigation system.
Wow.
They made their own plumbing system, own sewer, electrical. They made a reservoir so that they were able to farm there. Local like wildlife that had been away from the area for years and years and years came back. I mean, what they did was really amazing. This community, because so many people were drawn to Bhagwan, there were so many different kinds of people that were wanting to make this community. So there were like there were city planners, there were lawyers, there were construction workers, electricians, there were people that knew how to do all of these things, architects, whatever. What they did is really amazing. I mean, they had their own airport, they had their own like public transportation system. So what they made is amazing. The issue was some people were like, okay, well, the whole point of me moving out here was because I didn't want to be near anything. When you got this land, you only had the permits, or you declared that you were just going to make a small agriculture community, where really this is like now a whole thing where you have like an airport and like all this stuff. Like, this is wild. And so these legal battles started between some residents of Antelope, and then there was also this non-profit organization called 1,000 Friends of Oregon, and their whole thing is like protecting land rights and land usage in Oregon, kind of like trying to keep Oregon basically, and not in a like fucked up way, in a way that's like, hey guys, like nature's cool. So they got involved, and but the people of the commune, the people of Rajneeshpuram, were really very rigid and inflexible. Like they wouldn't give an inch.
They were refusing to compromise.
Yes. So because Antelope was the closest city, they knew a lot of the sannyasins hoped that they could kind of like have some kind of say or sway or power in what would go on in Antelope.
Okay.
And so some of the people, the sannyasins, purchased some land in Antelope. Then the Antelope government denied the Rajneeshis a business permit for like a mail order store thing that they wanted to have in town. They did that because they thought the land use that they were doing, Rancho Rajneesh or Big Muddy Ranch, was against the law, all of these things. And that was how that this activist group, 1,000 Friends of Oregon, they became involved, and they were like, yeah, let's like not let them have this. But then more sannyasins were just like, this fucking sucks, fuck you. So they just were like buying out the whole town.
Right.
They were just
And
like,
they had the money to do it.
They had the money to do it. And a lot of people that lived in the town, they didn't want to sell, but these people are like, the money was too good to say no
Right.
to. These are like retired people on a fixed income. Like, this is
Right.
really life-changing.
Right.
And they did this really just kind of out of spite, because the people of Antelope, they were willing to disincorporate their town, their village that they loved, because they would rather it not exist anymore than it be taken away from them. They lost because so many of the sannyasins had purchased property. Antelope stayed Antelope, and it actually ended up up being called a Rajneeshi. So like these people are petty as fuck, and not in a like internet fun way, like I'm a petty bitch. Like no, that's like you stole these people's town and then you changed the name.
Wow.
That's like the first thing that you do when you're colonizing something, is that you take away the language, you take away the name. And I know it's not the same thing. I know that's that's so extreme, but it's like you're just taking away what these people have. Yeah. But also, since they had so many people voting, they were like, okay, great. Now we're going to change the name of Rancho Rajneesh to officially be Rajneeshpuram. Now within Rajneeshpuram, there was like a bunch of different entities within the organization and like different corporate subsidiaries and financial stuff that I don't understand. Like this wasn't just a commune that you kind of think of where they farm and, you know, they make enough that they did do that, of course, but they had a bank, they had an umbrella organization called Rajneesh Services International, and it was incorporated in the UK, but it was based in Zurich, like all this stuff. Like it was like really like a company.
It was a headquarters. It was like a corporate headquarters.
Right. And it really wasn't supposed to be a religion. This was supposed to just kind of be
a lifestyle.
A lifestyle. And that was another thing that kind of made Rajneesh or Bhagwan so like appealing to people, was that he really like leaned into like the Western ideas of wealth. Like he really loved the finer things. He had like beautiful, very expensive watches. He had, I believe, 94 Rolls Royces.
Jesus God.
He had like a Rolls Royce processional every day, like a drive-by. That's where people got to like see him. He would just like drive by in his Rolls Royce. You got to think that some other local officials, like their ears are perking up. They're like, they have all this fucking money, a wild amount of money. And they're like, okay, let's like...
How are they fucking making it?
Well, a lot of the people, the sannyasins sold all of their belongings to move to this commune and just gave all of their money to the commune.
Jeez.
Yeah, and then they also had like investments. They were also selling books and shit and whatever.
Right.
Now, another issue that was arising for a lot of the people in Rajneeshpuram were like, hey, a lot of us aren't American. We can't really, how long can we stay here?
Right.
So they started implementing these like sham marriages.
Oh.
Yeah, where they're like two people from the cult who might have already been married to someone else, or maybe not married, but had a partner with someone else, whatever.
Right.
They would go to a different state, anywhere, a different city all across the US. They would live there for a while. They would live together in an apartment, make it seem like they were dating, live there long enough for it to seem realistic. They get married. They stayed there for a little bit longer, and then they just would go back to the commune and just continue their lives.
And they did this, and to kind of like throw the scent off the trail, they would just choose random places.
Yeah,
they would
anywhere.
go. Some go to Seattle. Some went way over on the East Coast. Some went to. No, they didn't just like do an overnight trip to fucking Vegas or something.
Right.
It was. This was focused. Like that is commit.
Oh yeah, and like taking a lot of money and taking a lot of time and like a coordinated effort. Like there's no way that could have just been like a couple people. People were started to think twice about how many marriages were happening, because also Bhagwan wasn't like super into the idea of marriage. Like he wasn't against it. It wasn't against the rules, but like it wasn't like something that he was pushing.
Right.
And also the people of Rajneeshpuram were like known to be like very sexually like active and like having sex like openly and stuff. And once again, you do you, my friends. But usually, especially at the time, married people weren't doing stuff with just like that with, you know, other people that weren't their partner. So people are like, this is interesting. And also at this time, there was starting to be maybe some questions with Bhagwan and his visa. And so they were like, hey, you know what? We should really make this a religion now. And they did. They declared it as a religion and have Bhagwan be the head of Rajneeshism.
Wow.
Because they're like, okay, so if he's the head of a religious organization, he can get a visa, he can stay. So they were like, okay, actually, no, this is a religion. They released some books. So it went from kind of saying like, we're not a religion to we are a religion.
Right.
But then that also brought up issues too, because a lot of the local officials were like, okay, so where is the separation of church and state here?
Oh.
It's like the people in head of Rajneeshism are completely controlling this town.
Exactly.
And those rules govern.
Ooh.
So that also kind of got them in a little bit of a sticky situation.
Okay.
You know what I mean? In Oregon, they didn't just have Rajneeshpuram Rajneeshpuram. They also owned a couple other businesses. They had, an investment corporation. They had a nightclub, a restaurant, a bakery, and then they also had Hotel Rajneesh in Portland. In June 1983, the hotel was bombed by not anyone involved with an Antelope, anything like that. It was a militant group called Jamaat ul Fukra, I think is how you say it.
Okay.
So sorry if I said that wrong.
And they attacked where?
They bombed the Hotel Rajneesh. The Rajneeshis had a hotel in Portland, Oregon, too.
Oh.
And no one died. And actually, the only person that was injured was the one that set off the bomb. So that was good. But that really just got the Rajneeshis really riled up. And they were like, we need to protect ourselves.
Holy shit.
They were like, okay, we need to do this thing. And then so they made it very obvious. I think they maybe even held press conferences about it, that they were acquiring a wild amount of semi-automatic weapons.
Oh.
Also keep in mind, they have planes in an airport too. It's not like they have an air force necessarily, but it's this is becoming the people are oh my God, they have these intense weapons, and they are making it clear that they're not going to provoke, but they won't hesitate in using them. They would practice all the time. So the people of Antelope would just be hearing
right.
insane. Rajneeshpuram even had its own police force. It was just cuckoo.
Wild.
Rumors even were starting that the National Guard was going to have to be called in to figure this out, because it was very intense. And then also Jonestown had already happened. They knew how out of hand cults like this can be, so they were very concerned. And actually, okay, the senator, we will do a whole episode or 2 or 3 on Jonestown.
Oh yeah.
Just for a little background of that, there was a U.S. senator that went to Jonestown. A lot of people had concerns. He wanted to check it out to make sure the American citizens there were okay.
Right.
And then he ended up getting shot and killed by the cult members. His name was Leo Ryan. Leo Ryan's daughter was in this cult.
Oh my God.
So on both sides, they kind of used her. Some the people not in the cult were like, Leo Ryan's daughter, don't you see what's happening? But then the sannyasins were like, we can't be bad. See, Leo Ryan's daughter is even with us. And she even said my dad would love it here and blah, blah, blah.
Wow.
No, he wouldn't, honey.
Wow.
So Oregon Attorney General David B. Frohnmeyer, okay?
Old hacksaw Frohnmeyer.
We love this guy, okay? And he's like, hey, this is the deal. There's no separation of church and state, and I'm not here for it. I'm worried about it. And then 1,000 Friends of Oregon was like, you guys violated state land use laws. This is bad. So now the people of Antelope and the surrounding areas, they're pissed.
Right.
And then they're setting up these joke flyers saying things it's open season,
yeah.
and saying and then being like open season on the red rats or the red vermin. So that's not good either. So things are really escalating. They're oh, you have guns, we have guns. Oh, you are going to come after us. Actually, it's prime time for an altercation. So Sheila, our gal, the one that's kind of in charge of everything, she, since, as I said, Bhagwan wasn't really giving many interviews, he was essentially silent. She was speaking for him and for the whole of the commune, and she was not pulling any punches. She didn't care who anyone was. She didn't care their title, their job, their whatever. She just really stood up for what she wanted and what she believed in, and in a way that is kind of empowering and impressive, and then also in a way where it's oh my gosh, you are so rude and delusional. It's
Right.
kind of both at the same time. But yeah, she would, swear on live TV. She said tough titties. She was just undiplomatic. The people of Oregon really had a hard time dealing with her because there was kind of no real compromise, and both sides felt so wronged that it was hard for any real progress to happen.
Right.
So here's what happens. So the Rajneeshis are okay, here's the deal. We need to get more people on the county board, because they had such a big population.
Right.
There's actually a chance that they could get a spot on the county board. And this is also what scared people. They were okay, so if they now have the town, Rajneeshpuram, and they have Antelope, so maybe they'll get control of the county. And if after what's next, are they going to get control of Oregon after that? So people were kind of worried about it. But the Rajneeshis were fuck yeah, we love this shit. we need to win the elections.
From the time they settled there to where they are now, how long of a period are we talking?
It only existed for about 7 years.
So Rajneeshpuram existed as a whole, and we aren't even to year 7, obviously.
No.
We're way
Yeah.
in. So damn,
A lot of shit's going on.
That's pretty fast moving.
Yeah.
I mean, goddamn, a sewer system. I mean, that alone, a sewer system, electricity. Like, good God,
Like they made a whole city and they did it so fast and so well. Like they made housing for everyone.
Yeah.
Like they made a huge like Buddha hall is what they called it. Like a meditation center. Like,
Wow.
yeah, wild. So they were like, okay, we need to like win these elections. We need more people. What are we going to do? We're going to just bring homeless people from across the country in, and they can stay here and live with us. And you know what? That's so nice. The idea of that is lovely. And at first, when you're watching the documentary and then you see the people getting upset about it, other people of Oregon are getting upset, you're like, you know what? This is a great thing that they're giving them housing and a job, and this is awesome. But the problem was they didn't really have the resources to have them. It kind of became an issue where a lot of the people that were coming in had mental or behavioral issues, and Rajneeshpuram had amazing resources, but it still is
it
a small ass
treat complex issues.
Right. So they had them there and brought them all in so that they could vote. And because they realized they really kind of got in over their head, eventually they started sedating the homeless people. They would put a sedative in the homeless population's beer every night. Without consent, did that to thousands of people.
Wow.
So this is where at least in my opinion, things really start to like turn up, where it's like, okay, this isn't now just like we're having like a spat.
There was nothing altruistic about
this.
this.
Exactly. You hoped that at least they were
This was
equally as excited that they could give these people a home.
These people were exploited. So
much so that once they realized that this project wasn't working, they just kicked the homeless people out. And there was actually someone who worked for the Salvation Army named Cricket Nicholson. And they said that this was like a mini crisis that was just kind of put on the Dalles, which the Dalles is another town that it's kind of like the closest bigger area, like more than just Antelope. And so this person, Cricket Nicholson, said, I remember it was extremely cold out. We were able to feed the first few waves with leftovers from a Thanksgiving potluck, then started cooking. The community started delivering food and other donations. There were about 300 of them, and we knew we couldn't accommodate that many homeless in the Dalles, so people started donating money for bus tickets to send them back where they were recruited. They were all very courteous and grateful. So Sheila still wanted to like get this election in the bag.
Right.
It's not really clear who came up with this idea, who was in on it, who wasn't in on it. What ended up happening was a small group of people. This was not the Rajneeshis as a whole. This was just a few people. They coordinated an attack on the people of the Dalles. So what they did was they made the salmonella, and they went to salad bars all around the Dalles, and they infected the salad bars. 751 people were infected with salmonella.
Good God.
And 45 people were hospitalized. No one died, thankfully. And it is considered to this day to be the largest biological warfare attack in U.S. history.
That is
Psychopath, sociopath behavior. And at first, the blame was put on the food runners or the food handlers at the restaurant. No, that's insane. It's happening all over the Dalles. It's 751 people. Like, that's insane. And that's only 751 people they know about. You know, there could have been a lot of other people that just never
weathered the storm.
They were just like, this sucks.
They just weathered it. They were just so used to it. Like,
yeah, I'm always shitting on my ass. I had salmonella. So that was in 1984. But then it actually ended up backfiring on them because everyone in the town, even if they weren't able to prove it, they were kind of like, wait a minute, this seems weird. I bet they're trying to get us sick, la la la. I think it was like the highest voter turnout in a while. And so the Rajneeshis did not win those seats. I think the Rajneeshis ended up just pulling their candidates.
Talk about getting out the vote.
Now, Bhagwan, he's like talking now. He's like fully done with the vow of silence. He's like,
done.
I think he's like, my house is a mess. Like, what hath Sheila done. I
Right.
have to speak up.
He's in roast mode.
Yeah, he's back in roast
He's in
mode.
roast mode.
And he actually does roast
He's
her
ready
ass.
to roast.
And so he's like talking, but at this point he's not really like quite ready to roast her ass. He's just like whatever, talking, blah blah blah. He's getting some legal trouble. People being like, "Hey, I think your like immigration is kind of like something's not right there." And some people are like, "Oh yeah, these marriages going on. I don't think that's quite right there." Also, they're kind of like, something in the back of my head seems kind of weird about
Right.
the Dalles. And also at this time, I don't think Bhagwan knew it yet, but Sheila had wiretapped his goddamn house. In fact, Sheila she bugged like the whole goddamn place.
Oh my god.
This fucking weirdo.
Well,
I mean, why? I mean, I know it's because she's manipulative,
It's
but
like
it's like
Misery.
what the amount of time.
I like to think that this just turned into Misery
Oh,
for Bob, like the movie Misery. He's just,
it really is.
He's like just James Caan sitting,
Yeah.
sitting with his legs and
Oh
braces.
my god, yeah, she is Kathy Bates for sure. Yeah, you love to see that. That is actually a really good comparison. Sheila's like, I got this whole fucking place bugged because I'm crazy,
Right.
and I heard that like Bhagwan was talking to his like dentist doctor guy, and he was like, hey dentist, if I wanted to die painlessly and like chilly, and the dentist was like, oh my gosh, like I'll give you the literal exact mix of drugs, of chemicals that you need. And then I think Bhagwan was like, cool. I think maybe even like some sort of like date was mentioned. Like he was like, yeah, hey, like it would be dope if I died on this day.
Right,
and
right.
the dentist was like, say no more. And Sheila's got the place tapped because she's wilding out. She's like, oh my God, we can't let this happen. We can't let the Bhagwan die.
Right.
So what do we got to do? I have to ask one of my closest friends to kill the dentist. And one of her friends is like, it's me. Yeah, like I'll do it.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So they get their own like syringe full of whatever the fuck poison. So they're like at this like prayer time.
Right.
And they're like moving around, having a good time. And then Sheila's friend, who's from Australia, she's like coming up behind him. And then she's like, hello, dentist. Then she tries to stab him. And the dentist is like, what the fuck? And then it's like a whole thing. And then, so it didn't work. So the dentist is like, okay, I know that you just tried to kill me. And they're like, what? Huh? And then the next day, Sheila and a bunch of her girls, including the friend that tried to kill the dentist guy, just get on a plane and they just fucking leave. They're like, fuck this place. And Bhagwan's like, okay, where's Sheila? And they're like, Sheila's like gone. I hate her now. I'm gonna go on like a whole spree to every goddamn publication that will have me.
Right.
And I'm gonna say like really like mean things about Sheila and call her and her friends a gang of fascists and like say that she wanted to sleep with me and that's why she was like upset because I never slept with her. And like, so this is also kind of weird. They're like, okay, why is this like enlightened man? He's stuck on roast mode.
He's stuck on roast mode.
And I love a good roast, but not everyone needs to roast. He needed to be roasted, I think, is really, and he wasn't. That's the issue with these cult leaders. No one fucking brings them down.
Ass.
No one roasts them. No one says, hey, it's weird that you are really, really slow at sitting in chairs.
I assumed he was dead half the time. I was like, Jesus Christ, someone check his fucking breathing.
Yeah, nonetheless, he was like, okay, Sheila's gone, fuck it. Hey, press, Sheila did a lot of fucked up stuff, including the Dalles salmonella thing. I invite you to look into that. So they look into it. It turns out they like confirmed that it was the same salmonella. It definitely is proven now that they did the Dalles bullshit.
Wow.
They also found out that they set fire to a Wasco County Planning Department office.
Oh, wow.
And another huge discovery, they found out that a small group of the sannyasins, Sheila and people she was working with, they had started a plan to assassinate Charles Turner, who was district attorney for Oregon. And it also wasn't just Charles Turner. I believe David Frohnmeyer was also mentioned, but I think maybe his wasn't as concrete as Charles Turner's. And David Frohnmeyer, who I said before, he admitted that when he was going through all of the evidence and the recordings and everything, that there wasn't enough evidence to prove that Bhagwan was for sure aware of these things.
Right.
But he truly believes that he did.
Right.
He just knew that the evidence wouldn't be enough that they had, but he really did believe that he was guilty for those crimes as well as his own crimes. He said that he felt that Rajneesh was not, quote unquote, disapproving of the poisoning. David Frohnmeyer felt that Sheila and Bhagwan were, quote, genuinely evil. So then Sheila, she pops off over in Europe. She's like hiding in Europe, traveling around, and then like she does like a news story, and then she's naked in the magazine, because I think she thought that would be cool, and it got a lot of attention, and so they found out where she was, and then she got sent back to America, and she was tried, and she pled guilty to these crimes. But then Bhagwan, he's like, oh shit, like they're really like fucking trying to get my ass.
Right.
So he tries to escape to Bermuda. They couldn't make him come back from Bermuda. So he was like, I'm gonna go to Bermuda. And also he's probably like, well, like I'd like to go to Bermuda. Great, but they stop him. They're like, no, this is not right. And he escaped with like $1 million worth of watches and like $58,000 in cash. He had a whole like crew of people with him and a private jet. It was just like a whole thing. So he's just like sent around to like all these different jails, probably just to like make him tired, I guess.
Right.
And they knew he wasn't well. I'm guessing they were kind of doing that on purpose to wear him down. And then they were like, hey, dude, like, here's like the deal. We like have you for all of these reasons. But the only thing they really had like enough evidence to like convict was immigration fraud. So they get him. At first he's like, I plead not guilty. And then he's like, hold on. Then he does this thing called an Alford plea, which is basically like you plead guilty without actually admitting that you're guilty. They're like, okay, we're not going to put you in jail, but you have to leave.
Right.
So he was like, okay, I can't be in America anymore. People in Rajneeshpuram are like, what do you mean?
Right.
And the community just kind of slowly disbanded. Some people went and followed Bhagwan. He was refused from 21 different countries after he left America. That's how bad his reputation was.
Dear God.
Until he finally went back to India. He got the ashram going back in Pune, had that going on. He still had that. And then he died on January 19th, 1990. He was just in really poor health. And I guess he thought, or a lot of the Rajneeshis thought, that he was being poisoned while he was in jail. But he also was in poor health literally all the time.
Yeah.
So who knows? His ashes are in a bedroom in the ashram in Pune. And his epitaph says, never born, never died. Only visited planet Earth between December 11th, 1931 and January 19th, 1990. After that, it really just, for Rajneeshpuram specifically, it fell away. It ended up selling for like a wildly low rate, and now it's actually like a Christian youth camp.
Oh, wow.
Later in his life, Bhagwan, he asked that he was always called Osho, so he is now considered to be Osho, and Osho International, or there's lots of different names for it, still exist. Sannyasins, they still exist. They are still around. There's no commune like there was. There's still an ashram, which is now I think called like the Osho Meditation Retreat Center or something, but there isn't like a place where people live like that.
Wow.
And also it's interesting too that I meant to say this before and I totally forgot. A lot of the time too, when I'm doing the research, it seems like everyone that was within the community though really loved it. It was just like this small group of people that was causing all of this
chaos.
Yeah. But a lot of the rest of it was positive and people liked it. And I think that was true for a lot of people, but something that wasn't in the documentary, there was a lot of issues, I guess, with sexual assault, child abuse. And I guess one man that lived in Antelope, his name's John Silvertooth, he said that there were always people trying to escape the ranch. They didn't like people leaving. So yeah, they said like I had heard stories of like some of the people in Antelope helping some of the people leave.
Really?
If they felt like they couldn't leave. Yeah, and also allegedly in a lot of Rajneeshi functions, they had strawberries dosed with MDMA. So people would have them and they didn't know. So they were like feeling so great and didn't even really So yeah, it is, for the most part, what we knew from Rajneeshpuram is no more.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, well, that is going to wrap it up for Rajneeshpuram. Thank you so much to Nicola Pascal for requesting this.
Thank you.
Maureen, thank you for doing so much hard work.
Oh, thank you.
Citizens of the Milky Way, good night and goodbye.